Today I'm out here at the Sealing Bridge at Liberty Ship Harbor Park. I'm going to show you where Quarantine Island is over here in the Brunswick River. That's Quarantine Island that they used during the late 1800s for the yellow fever epidemic. You can see Brandy's Point in the background. Look past where that old dock, past the Liberty ship slips, past that old dock that's all just pilings. And that wooded area you see over there, little island, was the first quarantine station called Brandy's Point or Brunswick Point. And they built a wooden building there on mud. And every time the tide would get high, would get flooded, so they closed that down. Okay, this is a map of Brandy Point right here. And this is the port of Brunswick across here. Brandy Point is also known as Brunswick Point. This is the Brunswick River, and that's the Turtle River, and that's East River. What's significant about Brandy Point, it was the first quarantine station they built in the 1800s for the yellow fever. And this is a close-up view of Brandy Point right here, the little island that they had the first quarantine station, which, as you could tell, it's not very stable there. It get floods. After they closed Brandy's Point down, the first quarantine station in Brunswick, they opened up one. Here's the Sealing Bridge. That's Jekyll side, a place called Cedar Hammock on the opposite side of the Brunswick River. And they had it open there in the late 1800s, but they closed it for no reason to favor this island here, Quarantine Island. This is a map of Cedar Hammock. Cedar Hammock was the second quarantine station they tried in Brunswick in the late 1800s, but it was also not stable and was also underwater as well. This is the Brunswick River, Highway 17, and this goes out towards the ocean. This is over here on the like you go on the Jekyll Island side. It's on that side of the river there. And this is a satellite view of Cedar Hammock. You can see how it was low land as well, and they had to abandon it. And this is Quarantine Island they used during the yellow fever epidemic in the late 1800s. They used this island for everybody that had to come in and check in before they went to the port of Brunswick. They had to go to Blackbeard Island first and get their boat inspected and cleansed if possible, and then they had to check into this quarantine station too. They were sick, they were quarantined for a while, and the ship was monitored before it entered the Brunswick port. Now remember, Quarantine Island you see here in Brunswick is a private residence. Do not go there. It's just like if it was your own property, when anybody coming on your land. So stay away from this island. It's private property. Okay, I'm looking at Quarantine Island over here in the Brunswick River, right near the Sealing Bridge. This was the last quarantine station built in Brunswick in the late 1800s. They built it because of yellow fever. Yellow fever was an epidemic transmitted from the Caribbean to ports. It was spread by mosquitoes, and it was only rampant during the warmer months, during the summer months. So when it got cold, yellow fever basically disappeared like malaria did. 1879, they passed the act, the Marine Hospital Act, to build quarantine stations to get the yellow fever epidemic under control. So they built quarantine stations like here in Brunswick and Blackbeard Island, McIntosh. Before the ships could go into port, they would have to come to the quarantine station like Quarantine Island and stop and be inspected. Soldiers, their sailors had to be inspected and watched and monitored for a certain amount of time. The ship had to be inspected. If the ship was clean, it was set free, and so was the people. The people were well, they were set free, but if they were sick, they were set aside in tents and hospital areas. Quarantine Island is made of ballast stones. Ballast stone is a stone they put in a boat, a wooden ship back in the 1800s, pre-1900s to help the ship with ballast. But when it came to port, it would empty it out to load its cargo, because the cargo would take the place of the ballast stones. And so they would just dump the ballast stones in the same spot. And over time, the ballast stones would sit there and stuff would grow around it. And that's what created this island right here, Quarantine Island. The problem with this station was quarantine station was too close to Brunswick. As you can tell, Brunswick's right here. So a lot of sailors and people slipped out from this island made to Brunswick and affected other people in Brunswick. So Brunswick had a lot of cases of yellow fever, which they shouldn't if they would have had the quarantine station further out. But this is what they chose. This was the third one. Like for example, in Darien, Blackbeard Island in McIntosh County, they had an island way out, a long ways from Darien, a couple miles from Darien, so they had to stop there. And Darien had hardly no cases of yellow fever in the late 1800s. But Brunswick had several because people slipped in or was too close to the mainland. Just people didn't take precautions like they should. But these quarantine stations were to stop the spread of yellow fever, to halt it and keep it away from the rest of the city. Back in the late 1800s on the Quarantine Island, also on Blackbeard Island, they had like a a hospital setup out there, like a buildings out there for the sick and the well, place to have surgery, to do surgery, and other buildings to take care of you where the people have to stay because there's nurses and doctors staying over here.